Hi everyone, thank you for joining today's Lunch and Learn on the PHA/HAZOP facilitation course. My name is Xiu Lu and I am the Process Safety Analytics CIT here at Risk Alive, where I also manage our training programs and also at Scribe for some PHA sessions as well. So today's agenda includes a presentation by Bryce, an experienced course instructor who also facilitated many PHAs. And today we'll cover what is good facilitation and why does it matter, about the PHA's HAZOP facilitation course modules overview, and who should attend this course and benefits for participants. After the presentation, we'll leave the floor for questions from the audience. Bryce, I will now pass it over to you to introduce yourself and get the presentation started.
All right. So as you said, I'm here to talk a little bit about the facilitation workshop or the PHA HAZOP facilitation that we do, that I teach for PHA. So here's sort of the agenda I'm going to go through real quickly. Welcome you, introduce myself. What does good facilitation look like? Why does that matter? Give you an overview of what PHA facilitation HAZOP course looks like within Risk Alive, who should attend the course, why you should attend, and then I'll open it up for a Q&A at the end. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Bryce Boehmer. I'm leading this today. I've been a senior facilitator for quite a while. I've been in the industry since 1983. I've been doing process safety since the early 90s. I've facilitated well over 4,000 PHAs in my career so far. I've facilitated things all over the world and led PHAs in many different industries, both in and like everything from oil and gas right through to nuclear, as well as doing them for pulp and paper mills. Anywhere there's been a process I've facilitated PHAs for. I've been a PHA process safety, technical safety expert for over 30 years now. I'm an active member of the Process Safety Community of Practice at Energy Safety Canada, and I've been teaching process safety courses for the last 3 or 4 years now. I am currently employed in the oil and gas industry with one of our pipeline companies in the industry. But as I said, I started in 1983 on offshore drilling vessels up in the Beaufort Sea in the high Arctic. So long, varied career. So what makes a good facilitator? A good facilitator is somebody that can lead a group and lead the group to a natural conclusion on items. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You don't have to know the process you're facilitating really well. You just have to have a really solid understanding of the process of doing a PHA. How do we go through and run a PHA, whether it's a HAZOP, a what if, or any of those other types of PHA programs that we run out in with engineering and with operations and maintenance. You have to be a good listener to be a good facilitator and be able to disseminate what is being said to you so you can capture it in such a way that the team understands what you're talking about, that you can look back in 6 months, a year, 2 years, and understand what has been discussed, what has been captured, what was the thought process behind it. So a good facilitator is just somebody that can lead a group of people. It doesn't, like I say, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room to be a good facilitator. So this course that we teach, it's targeted to people that want to develop into being a facilitator. It's targeted to people that will be participating in PHAs. As we go through the program, and as we're going through the course, we cover a lot of different information in there. And I bring in a lot of my real world experience that I've had in facilitating PHAs in various industries. I like to tell stories about what I've seen, what I've experienced as I've been facilitating, and you can believe I've experienced a lot of different things after doing this for as many years as I have. So you might ask, what will I learn by attending this course? What you're going to learn is how a PHA should be run. Sort of the steps that you need to take as you're going through a PHA, what types of questions you should be looking for, what types of people will be attending a PHA and stuff, and the different roles that people play within a PHA. We'll teach you what is a quorum, who should be there, what's the right size of the number of people that are there, who should be doing all these sort of things. So as you're going through, this is the course outline that we go through. So we talk about the introduction to PHA. I explain what is a PHA. We talk about facility risk, human factors, facility siting, teams conducting a PHA, the methodology, selecting the right PHA methodology, and that's a really key thing, knowing what you should be utilizing when you're coming to do a PHA. At what stage should you do your PHA, and what should you be doing at those different stages as you're going through your design and stuff. We talk about, again, more about facilitating. We talk about the workshop after and your first meeting, what you should expect out of your first meeting. One of the things that I would say to you, taking this course will not make you a facilitator. You will not be a facilitator when you come out of this course. You will have an understanding of what facilitation is. You will have an understanding of what a PHA is. This is the starting point to becoming a facilitator. Having this knowledge and stuff will help you develop and grow into being a facilitator. But coming out of this, you won't be ready to go out and just facilitate a full-blown HAZOP on a complex system right away. You'll come out with enough knowledge and understanding to probably facilitate a nice little what if or hazard or maybe a basic simple HAZOP, but you won't be a full-blown facilitator. I don't set you up for failure. I set you up to be successful if you choose to go on and become a facilitator. So in section 1, we talk about PHAs, and we discuss what is the difference between a HAZOP and a PHA. Does anyone on this line know what the difference is between a HAZOP and a PHA? Anybody want to take a stab?
Hi.
Hi,
HAZOP
go
is
ahead.
a critical examination to identify the gaps in the system or the process industries or operating companies. If any new modification or new process changes or new equipments or design changes, so the HAZOP will be conducted and
Yeah,
the qualitative assessment.
yeah, and you're right. A HAZOP is a hazardous operability study, but a HAZOP is one element of PHA. PHA is Process Hazard Analysis, and it encompasses a HAZOP plus all the other components of a of that go on within PHAs. So if you hear the term PHA or HAZOP, they're both correct. They're talking about basically the same thing. But what you want to ask, if you're asked to do a PHA, what type of PHA do you want me to do? And it might be a HAZOP, it could be a what if, it could be a checklist PHA, it could be doing an FMEA, failure modes and effects analysis. They're all components within a PHA, and we go through that as we're going through the things. So as I show here, here's PHA, and these are the things that make up the world of PHA. They're all elements within a PHA. So it's important to, as you go through this, we will go through these items, each of these items individually through the course, where you'll have an understanding of what each one is and when to utilize it. Sometimes people will ask you to do a HAZOP when really a what if is sufficient for what they're looking for and what stage of design they're in. We talk about the history of PHAs. Where did it all come from? When did it come into effect? Why do we use it? You know, we talk about the software, where the industry made this shift from starting from doing just risk assessments into a more detailed type of analysis, what type of standards there are that reference PHAs. Then we get into facility risk when we talk about facility risks, and I help you understand what types of risks are in different facilities and stuff, because every facility has some similar risks, but they're also unique. No two facilities are operated and ran the same way. So I try and help you understand that what to look for when you're looking at facilities and facility risk. We'll talk about human factors. How do people play a role in what we're doing in a PHA or in a facility? You know, we'll talk about how people are your biggest risk in your facility. They're also your greatest asset, but they are your biggest risk in a facility. So we go through that, and we go through the types of human factors that you need to be aware of. We'll talk about facility siting and making sure that as you're going through your PHA, that you're looking at where is that facility in relation to the other the other areas in a facility, or even looking at off-site type things and stuff, and ensuring that your facility is sited properly and that it is safe in the location that it's put in. We talk about teams, what type of team you should build, who should be there, what is a quorum. You know, I'll talk about who needs to be in the PHA, who are elements of your quorum team, the core team that must be sitting there as you're going through and starting to do your HAZOP or your PHA, whatever it happens to be, and the roles they play within your quorum. And this is important for you, even if you're participating, is to define who the quorum is, who has to be in that room. And if they're not there, then you don't go forward and you don't start talking about things because you haven't got the right people in the room. So we talk a lot about making sure you have the right people in the room and how many people you should have. Should you have a whole bunch of people? You know, is it better to have lots of people or just a small group of people? And we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the reasons why you need to have the right people and the right size of room in there, the right number of people in there to discuss things. Because there is a balance and there is an optimal number of people and disciplines that should be in the room so that you can get the best quality PHA done. So we talk about participants and their knowledge, experienced, and what levels they should be. And when you need to bring in other external people to come in and talk about things. They don't need to sit there all the time, but there are times when you'll be coming up to a package, you need a vendor there to talk to it and stuff like that. So we'll talk about that. We talk about having someone that you need to make sure you have people that have the right knowledge in the room, especially someone that's very familiar with the process that you're evaluating. And why it's important to have them there. You need a facilitator, obviously, that's knowledgeable about the PHA methodology being used and should be impartial to the evaluation. If you're part of a project team and you're been asked to do the HAZOP of that project you're working on, you're not impartial to that evaluation. You need somebody that's impartial, that can come in, because as a facilitator, we're the impartial party that's in there, because you don't care as a facilitator. I don't care what the project is about. I care making sure that it's been HAZOP properly, or that the PHA study I'm doing is proper, that I will ask the right questions, that I'm going to dive into areas where I think we need to probe a little further, that I don't think that we're looking at the right item. And if I'm part of the project, I'm going to have a little bit of blinders on, and I won't be diving in where I need to dive in, or I'll gloss over things that I know are maybe not quite right with the design, but it's okay, right? As a facilitator, you have to be impartial. You can't have vested interest in what's going on. We'll talk about the team size, and it all depends. As I said, it depends on the complexity, the types of method. It's important to make sure that you have not too many and not too few people, because it reduces the efficiency. And we're going to talk about how to know what is the right number of people in there. We're going to talk about the responsibilities of the team members coming in. You know, why do we need to do things? I always say when I start my PHAs that I'm not going to punish those. If I have quorum there, I'm not going to punish those that are on time by making us wait for those that are late. You start your PHA on time, you end it on time. If the team chooses to go over a little while, that's fine, but you always start on time. Even coming back from breaks, put up a timer. This is how long we're taking our break for. As soon as that timer goes off, as long as you have quorum, you start your PHA. Don't wait for those that are there. You know, being focused, having no distractions there. I always tell people, if you don't need your laptop, close your laptop. And because you're being paid to be there to participate in this HAZOP or this PHA, you're not being paid to do your other work and answer emails while you're sitting here. I want the people to be focused, even shutting off their phones or putting them on vibrate or silent if they're not on call. We respect others' ideas, participate, critically evaluate ideas, all this sort of stuff. Then we get into conducting a PHA. How do you conduct the PHA? And this is important to understand, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about this, how to set it up and how to go about facilitating. I try and give people, when they're in my course, I try and give them all an opportunity to facilitate a little bit of a PHA, so that they get a little experience just using the participants in the course. They get to be the facilitator and walk us through an area of a PHA and brainstorm to get a little feel of what it means and how it's done. Then we get into the methodologies, all the different types of PHA, and that's where I go through all those things that I showed earlier of the different elements of a PHA. We'll go through each of those in depth. What is a what if? What is a HAZOP? How do you conduct a what if? How do you conduct a HAZOP? How do you do an FMEA? How do you do a HAZOP? You know, we'll go through all those elements and talk about them in depth, so that you understand what that element is about and how to utilize it later, because that comes into the next section where you're going to be selecting the right PHA methodology, and so ensuring that you understand when do you select what, at what stage in a project's life cycle do you select this type of methodology. Because if you select the wrong methodology, it's going to slow down you won't necessarily have the right information available. You may have too much information available, and so it doesn't fit. Or the complexity of what you're facilitating is such that you require a deeper dive into it. Or is the change pretty minor, relatively minor, that you can get away with doing a what if or something like that instead of having to do a full-blown HAZOP on it. So we'll talk about that and we'll walk you through how to select it, what is the right time to use what methodology. The next section we get into in the course is the documentation. Because to conduct a PHA, you need to have certain documentation available in the room ready to utilize. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what information do you need so you can conduct your PHA. We'll also talk about what type of documentation do you generate after your PHA? Should you be generating? And so we'll go through all of those types of items as we're going through this course. We talk about facilitation in itself. We get into the types of people that you have in your facilitation. And sometimes one individual will play multiple types of roles. So we'll talk about people that just want to be speed demons and rush through everything. Oh, it's not important. We'll just rush through that, and how to slow them down, how to get them to come back and actually be an active, good participant in the PHA. So we go through that. We talk about the qualifications of a facilitator, the types of things, formal PHA facilitation training, which this course is. It will give you that overview of a PHA and what types of things you need to do to be involved in a PHA. Facilitation, conflict resolution is key to being a good facilitator because you are going to have conflict in your PHA as you're facilitating and stuff. There will be conflict. And we'll talk about that. And how do you handle that when it does happen to you? You need to be experienced as a PHA member, team member. You should be sitting in PHAs. If you want to be a facilitator, you need to be sitting in PHAs, seeing how PHA is run, seeing how that facilitator runs that PHA, taking notes. If possible, you should act as a scribe before you ever start facilitating so that you're getting used to how to capture the information, what types of information, and work with multiple facilitators if possible. You need to be able to interpret engineered drawings. So the P&IDs, the PFDs, the single line drawings, the isometric drawings, all those things, you have to understand what is on a P&ID and what do all the symbols mean. Where can you find the information if it's not on your P&ID? Where can you go look for the information? You need to be able to read a shutdown key and do it effectively. For me, I've been doing this for so long and looking at this so long. I can take any set of P&IDs and read it like it's a book, and I can tell you how your facility or how that unit runs based off your P&IDs, what types of flows you got going through it, what type of flow you got coming out of it, all of that stuff. It's all on the P&ID. You need to be able to read P&IDs and understand what is on the P&ID. If you haven't done that before, I highly recommend that you take our P&ID interpretation course at Risk Alive and the Institute of Hazardous Prevention teaches, because we go into that and we help you understand what is a P&ID. As I said, no day-to-day responsibilities. Extensive engineering and safety experience. You have to be able to understand a lot of different types of engineering. It does you no good if you only understand one type of engineering. If you're only ever worked in chemical, great. But it may not make you a good facilitator. You need to have an understanding of structural engineering, process engineering, chemical engineering, instrumentation, electronics engineering, controls, all of that stuff. You have to have an understanding of that and stuff to be able to be a good facilitator, because you're going to be facilitating things that you have no idea about it, but you should be able to call on your engineering and safety experience to help you understand what's going on. So responsibilities, you're there to prepare. You need to motivate. You are a cheerleader. Even when it's flogging and things are dragging, you need to be on top of your game and be positive and keep going and be a cheerleader. Get people fired up, excited about being in the room. I love facilitating. A lot of people, like, I've been a facilitator a long time. I facilitated PHAs and HAZOPs for a long time. And when I used to tell people what I did for a living and that I go facilitate, their eyes roll up in their head and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you do that. I actually love it. I love being in a room doing it. If you ever sit in one with me, you'll see, because I'm the cheerleader. I'm motivating the team. You need to be able to manage people. You need to know what documents you need. You're a document person. You have to keep track of all your documents and all your materials and stuff. And then you need to maintain quality control. Because at the end of the day, when you're done that PHA, it's your name as a facilitator that's on it. And you need to make sure it is right. And you should be checking as you're going through and facilitating through a PHA. You should be checking with the team all the time. Did I capture what you had said? Is this correct? Is this the intent of what we said? Is it clear? Is it understandable? So you need to be able to maintain that quality control. Finally, one of the last sections we get into is the workshop itself, where we actually talk about at the workshop and what's happening in the workshop and how it should be organized, how it should be run and stuff. And then finally, we'll talk about your first meeting. What do you do from here? You've been in the course, you've gone through all this, you're going to go out and facilitate. How should you do your first meeting? How should you set it up? And that's basically the end of my presentation. Any questions?
Yeah, hi. So my question is related with the preparation and process safety information. In my experience, many of the times the process safety information is lacking or is not available as much it should be available, or if a facilitator wish it to be. So to throw some experience on it, is there any way out for this? Because however you do it, P&IDs might not have the correct information sometimes, which results into a lot of marking up during the session. A lot of designing goes on during the session that kills some time. And definitely it requires your rigorous experience and cheerleadership to bring the POX online.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I 100%. I've ran into that many times where you go in and you're starting to facilitate a PHA and you get to a certain area and all of a sudden the operation says, hold on. This area doesn't exist anymore, right? Or
yeah,
we've
yeah,
added
that's true.
something into that, right? And so you just got to be able to pivot and go, okay, great. If that doesn't exist, we're not going to do that section. Please disregard that. You want to try to minimize as much designing in the PHA. When you're starting to do your PHA, what the stage of the drawings needs to be IFH, issued for HAZOP, or issued for construction, at least that stage if it's a project. If it's an existing facility, work with the team that's hired you or that you're working with to get ensure that the drawings have been redlined and that they are as up to date as they can be. We know that there's going to be things that are missed. There will be process safety information that is lacking and stuff. And that's why it's important to have the right people in the room, operations, maintenance, the process engineers and stuff that can talk to the information that is missing on the P&IDs. Because I've never been in one that it's perfect, that I have everything I need. So you do the best you can, and you make sure when you're documenting your stuff that you document that this information was missing. We are doing the, we're relying on the information from the operations and maintenance people. You just have a disclaimer.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the right way to go, that we have to definitely note it during the session that this information or this process safety info is missing, was
Yeah.
not available. And during the course of the HAZOP, the input from the maintenance and operations has been registered. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Bryce.
Yeah, and if it is a project or something where they are missing information, it's okay to skip that and come back to it later as well. If it's a multi-day HAZOP and they say, well, we can get that information tomorrow, great. We'll skip that for now. We'll come back to it. But make sure you tag it so you know to come back.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll ask a quick question here, Bryce.
Sure. Yeah.
Have you do you cover integration of cyber risk into your PHAs, like sort of along the lines of the cyber PHA methodology or anything like that?
No, we don't cover that within the course. There is other types of PHAs that do cover that, like you can go with an HAZOP or something similar that would have give you the ability to look at the types of cyber risks that could come in and stuff. You can do a controls. We do talk about controls, and if it is a concern in as you're going through and doing a PHA, I would definitely recommend that you bring it up and talk about it if you have the right people in the room that can talk to that issue. And that's the key. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think so. Thanks.
Okay, super. Diane, you have a question?
Yep. So you mentioned you need to know very well and have experience in multiple disciplines of engineering.
Yes.
And like you said, if you are only in chemical, then you need to know more. And just like on practice, how would they look if you were a process engineer, let's say for 5 years, and then you need like experience in more interdisciplinary roles like project engineering or process safety? Even the process safety, you kind of still stay more on the process side.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to necessarily be an engineer that knows everything. You just have to be able to have a good understanding of the other types of engineering that goes on and understand what they're talking about when you're facilitating. Like myself, I've facilitated so many different things. I understand a lot of different types of engineering and stuff that's going on. And it's just really helpful as you're going through. If all you understand is chemical, you're going to struggle when the electricians or the control people are talking about how different controls work, and you may not understand or be able to ask the right questions and stuff. And being a facilitator is all about knowing the questions to ask and asking the right questions, so that when you do get your set of P&IDs from the group that you're facilitating for and you're looking at them, that you can look at the P&IDs and understand what is on that P&ID and what is it showing you, and how does it all work, right?
Mhm.
So Yeah, that's why I say it's important to have a good understanding of lots of different types of engineering, just not one engineering. It makes
Got
you a
it.
better facilitator at the end.
Thank
So
you.
I have a question here from our Abby. How do you handle conflict resolutions that seem like there's no final decision or agreement between members? Great question. You're always going to have conflict. You need to try and get it to a point where they can agree, they can live with what is being agreed to or what is being discussed. They may not like it, but they can live with it and stand behind the team. If they can't, you put a time, you say, let's have a timeout. You guys go out and hash this out and come back to the group. Do you need an hour, half an hour? Do we need to stop and convene tomorrow? But you try your best to try and get them to an agreement, at least to a point where they can live with what is being talked about and what is being discussed. Hopefully that helps your question.
So I just quickly mentioned that our next scheduled PHA HAZOP facilitation course is on April 13 to 15. If you're new to PHAs, we also offer a more entry-level course called Intro to PHA/HAZOP, which is also taught by Bryce as well. I would recommend this course as a good starting point to anyone who wants to be a scribe or will be participating in PHAs instead of going straight to a facilitator role, which is more advanced. You can view and register all our courses on Risk Alive websites or simply reach out to me and I will get you through the process and answer all your questions. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you find something valuable from this session. We will see you in our next webinar. Thank you, everyone.